Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading Counter Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th chapter, text 24. Sahankara iti Bhakta Vikruva Samabhu Triya Vargas Tamas Cheti Yadi Dravya Sakti Kriya Jnana Iti Prabhu Sahakarati Bhakta Vikruva Samaputriya Vayantas Rajastasya Tamasya Rajasakya Jnana Prabhu Sahakarati Bhakta Vikruva Samaputriya Vayantas Rajastasya Tamasya Dravya Shakti Kriya Shakti Jnana Shakti Sohankarayeti Prakto Vikruvan Samabhutrita Vaikanikas Tajasascha Tamasasas Chaitiyadvidi Dravya Shaktir Kriya Shaktir Jnana Shaktir Iti Prabhu
Sahankara iti prakto
Sahankara iti prakto
Vikurvan samabhutrida
Vikruvan Samabhutrida
Vaikarikas Taijasascha
Varikankas Tajasascha
Tamasas Cheti Adbhida
Tamasasya Streti Yadvidi
Dravya Shakti Kriya Shaktir
Dravya Shaktir Kriya Shaktir
Jnana Shaktir iti Prabhu
Jnana Shaktir Iti Prabhu
Sohankara iti prokto
Sohankara iti prakto
Vikurvan samabhutrida
Vikurvan Samabhutrida
Vaikarikas tajasascha
Vaikanikas Tajastascha
Tamasascheti tadbuddha
Tamasasteti Yadvida
Dravya Shakti Kriya Shakti
Dravya Shaktir Kriya Shaktir
Jnana Shakti iti Prabhu
Jnana Shaktir Iti Prabhu
Sohankara iti prakto
Sahankara Iti Prakto
Vikurvan samabhutrida
Vikruvan Samabhutrida
Vaikarikas tajasascha
Vaikanikas
Tamasascheti yadvida.
Tamasasteti yadvida.
Dravya Shakti Kriya Shaktir.
Dravya Shaktir Kriya Shaktir.
Jnana Shaktir iti Prabhu.
Jnana Shaktir iti Prabhu.
Sahankara iti prakto
Sahankara iti prakto.
Vikurvan samabhutrida
Vikravan samabhutrida.
Vaikarikas tajasascha
Vaikanikas tajascha.
Tamasascheti yadpida
Tamasasteti yadvida.
Dravya Shakti Kriya Shaktir
Dravya Shakti Kriya Shaktir.
Jnana Shaktir iti Prabhu.
Jnana Shaktir iti Prabhu.
Sohankara iti prokto.
Sahankara iti prakto.
Vikurvan samabhota trida.
Vikravan samabhutrida.
Vaikarikas tajasascha.
Vaikanikas tajascha.
Tamasaseti yadvida.
Tamasasteti yadvida.
Dravya sakti kriya sakti.
Dravya Shaktir Kriya Shaktir.
Jnana sakti iti prabho.
Jnana Shaktir iti Prabhu.
Sohangara iti prokto
Sahankara iti prokto.
Vikurvan samabhutrida
Vikravan samabhutrida.
Vaikarikas tajasascha
Vaikanikas tajascha.
Tamasascheti yadvidha
Tamasasteti yadvidha.
Dravya Shakti Kriya Shakti
Dravya Shakti Kriya Shaktir.
Jnana Shakti iti Prabhu.
Jnana Shaktir iti Prabhu.
Sohankara iti prokto.
Sahankara iti prakto.
Kurvan samabhutrida.
Vikravan samabhutrida.
Vaikarikas tajasascha.
Vaikanikas tajascha.
Tamashascheti yadvida.
Tamasasteti yadvida.
Dravya Shakti Kriya Shaktir.
Dravya Shaktir Kriya Shaktir.
Jnana Shaktir iti Prabhu.
Jnana Shaktir iti Prabhu.
Sahankara iti prakto.
Sahankara iti prakto.
Vikaran samabhutrida.
Vikravan samabhutrida.
Vaikarikas tajascha.
Vaikanikas tajascha.
Tamashaschati yadvidi.
Tamasasteti yadvidhi.
Dravya Shakti Kriya Shaktir.
Dravya Shaktir Kriya Shaktir.
Jnana Shaktir iti Prabhu.
Jnana Shaktir iti Prabhu.
Sohankara iti prokto.
Sahankara iti prakto.
Vikurvan samabhutrita.
Vikravan samabhutrida.
Vaikarikas tajasascha.
Vaikanikas tajascha.
Tamasascheti yadpida.
Tamasasteti yadvida.
Dravya shakti kriya shakti.
Dravya Shaktir Kriya Shaktir.
Jnana shakti iti prabho.
Jnana Shaktir iti Prabhu. Would anyone like to chant online? Do you have someone there who wants to chant? Oh, okay. Unmute. Yeah. For the user online who wants to chant, unmute the Zoom. Because then they have to do something like raise their hand or something, and that kind of, what's that? We can go ahead, or I should hold on a minute. Ego. Iti, thus. Prokta, said. Vikrivan, being transformed. Samhabhut, became manifested. Trida, in three features. Vaikanka, in the mode of goodness. Tejasa, in the mode of passion. Cha, and tamasa, in the mode of ignorance. Cha, also. Iti, thus. Yat, what is. Vida, divided. Dravya Shakti, powers that evolve matter. By Gora Nitai Kijai. Kriya Shakti, initiation that creates. Jnana Shakti, intelligence that guides. Iti, thus. Prabhu, O Master. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The self-centered materialistic ego, thus being transformed into three features, becomes known as the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance in three divisions, namely the powers that evolve matter, knowledge of material creations, and the intelligence that guides such materialistic activities. Narada, you're quite competent to understand this. Purport, materialistic ego, or the sense of identification with matter, is grossly self-centered, devoid of clear knowledge of the existence of God. And this self-centered egoism of the materialistic living entities is the cause of their being conditioned by the other paraphernalia and continuing their bondage of material existence. In the Bhagavad Gita, the self-centered egoism is very nicely explained in the 7th chapter, verses 24 through 27. The self-centered impersonalist, without a clear conception of the personality of Godhead, concludes in his own way that the personality of Godhead takes a material shape from his original impersonal spiritual existence for a particular mission. And this misleading conception of the Supreme Lord by the self-centered impersonalist continues, even though he is seen to be very interested in Vedic literature such as the Brahma Sutras and other highly intellectual sources of knowledge. This ignorance of the personal feature of the Lord is due simply to ignorance of the mixture of different modes. The impersonalist thus cannot conceive of the Lord's eternal spiritual form of eternal knowledge, bliss, and existence. The reason is that the Lord reserves the right of not exposing himself to the non-devotee, who, even after a thorough study of literature like the Bhagavad Gita, remains an impersonalist simply by obstinacy. This obstinacy is due to the action of Yoga Maya, a personal energy of the Lord that acts like an aide-de-camp by covering the vision of the obstinate impersonalist. Such a bewildered human being is described as mudha, or grossly ignorant, because he is unable to understand the transcendental form of the Lord as being unborn and unchangeable. If the Lord takes a form or material shape from his original impersonal feature, then it means that he is born and changeable from impersonal to personal. But he is not changeable, nor does he ever take a new birth like a conditioned soul. The conditioned soul may take a form birth after birth due to his conditional existence in matter, but the self-centered impersonalists, by their gross ignorance, accept the Lord as one of them because of self-centered egoism. Even after so-called advancement in knowledge of the Vedanta, the Lord being situated in the heart of every living entity knows very well the tendency of such conditioned souls in terms of past, present, and future. But the bewildered conditioned soul hardly can know him in his eternal form. By the will of the Lord, therefore, the impersonalist, even after knowing the Brahman and Paramatma feature of the Lord, remains ignorant of his eternal personal feature as ever existing Narayan, transcendental to all material creation. The cause of such gross ignorance is constant engagement by the materialistic man in the matter of artificially increasing material demands. To realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has to purify the materialistic senses by devotional service. The mode of goodness or the Brahminical culture recommended in the Vedic literatures is helpful to such spiritual realization. And thus, the Jnana Shakti stage of the conditioned soul is comparatively better than the other two stages, namely Dravya Shakti and Kriya Shakti. The whole material civilization is manifested by a huge accumulation of materials, or in other words, raw materials for industrial purposes. And the industrial enterprises, Kriya Shakti, are all due to gross ignorance of spiritual life. In order to rectify this great anomaly of materialistic civilization, based on the principles of Dravya Shakti and Kriya Shakti, one has to adopt the process of devotional service of the Lord by adoption of the principles of Karma Yoga mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 27 as follows. Yat karoshi yad anashi, yad jidhoshi dadashi yat, yat tapashi kunteya, tat kurvasha mad apranam. O son of Kunti, all that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away, as well as all austerities that you may perform, should be done as an offering unto me. So yeah, this is a really good purport. I listened to a verse by Chandravali Swami. He gave a lecture on this. So he was saying there's some specific details here in the purport. And Srila Prabhupada really pretty much summarizes up the Bhagavad Gita from the 7th chapter, verse 24 through 27, really nicely. That's Naradama Mad Mudha, right? Those who are grossly foolish, ignorant, lowest among men, do not know my higher nature and supreme, think that I've assumed this form from the impersonal Brahman. For them, they are covered by his yoga maya, or they're covered by Krishna's internal potency. And so therefore, they can't see things as they are. And Prabhupada was saying, even after reading Bhagavad Gita and Vedanta, Brahma Sutras, it's due to an obstinacy. They're obstinate, so obstinacy. And so then we're discussing the industrial enterprises, the Kriya Shakti, the cultivation of knowledge, Jnana Shakti, and what was the other one? Divya Shakti. So they're explaining how the three modes of material nature works. And so Krishna, he states this also. So they're discussing the qualities, symptoms of the mode of ignorance, which is explained in Bhagavad Gita: laziness, indolence, madness, intoxication. And he gave a few examples. He was saying, we have an example. I guess we have someone who's actually been making progress. He comes and chants, but he's not really in full control of his facilities. But, we see these people. He said some homeless person was wandering around from room to room looking for something to steal. And I said, why do they look for something to steal? So that they can get some intoxication like that. So he said, so basically we just had to take the responsibility and remove the person from the facilities. Chandravali Swami said he even walked into his room and saw that he was there and left and went to another room like that. So, and then he was explaining how the symptoms of the mode of passion, right? And he was saying, I like to drive fast. He said in America, you can only drive 55. Speed limit used to be 60. Right. So what is it? The speed limit is 55. You'll get arrested or get a ticket, or the cars in America start shaking after you get to 70 miles per hour. But he said in Europe and in Germany, he said, especially in Germany, it's a great place to drive really fast. You're going 100 miles an hour and cars are still passing you up like you're not even moving. You can drive 140 miles an hour, but there's a drawback on that, right? Is that with Prabhupada was saying about happiness, you're not experiencing the stress actually really when you're having happiness, but the intelligent person knows that there's going to be the stress. The stress is going to follow the happiness like that. So that's the mixed mode of passion. So he said, basically, if you get in an accident with these little, small, really fast cars, so there's nothing left of you in the car, like that. I remember there was, what was it, Lady D that died in a car accident there on, what is it? It's like a really fast freeway, subway kind of place. They drive really, really fast, over 100 miles an hour, 120 miles an hour, and they got in an accident. As paparazzi was trying to take the pictures, it looked really bad. It didn't look like a person anymore, with all the skin kind of, it was a really bad photo. Well, actually, it was a video. So, yeah, these, so those are the drawbacks. And then, the class ended before I can get to the mode of goodness, but we can understand from Bhagavad Gita what the mode of goodness means. Charity, cleanliness, simplicity, study the Vedanta, acceptance of a spiritual master, compassion, celibacy, brahmacharya. So there's a good example there of the qualities of the mode of goodness. So we're stating here that the mode of goodness, or the cultivation of the Brahminical culture, the Jnana Shakti, is conducive for spiritual realization. Much better than the mode of passion, where the mode of passion, your spiritual realization would be limited, that eventually the mode of passion has to be given up and come to the platform of goodness. So this is our whole process here. So, and also Prabhupada, the way he was summarizing the verse, text 27, that Krishna, he's stating that he knows everything past, present, and future. He's also stating, he begins like on text 24 of the impersonalists and the non-devotees, the demons. They think he's assumed a personal form from impersonal Brahman. And Krishna gets to the verse where through engaging in devotional service, the devotees, they symptoms of that control the senses and engage in devotional service, chanting and hearing his glories, his pastimes, hearing his name. So this is actually the way to actually associate with Krishna, is chanting Hare Krishna. It's not different from Krishna, hearing Krishna's pastime, seeing Krishna's form in the form of the deity, and eating Krishna prasad. So yeah, this process is just is really nice, just simply nice. So I don't know, were any questions or comments or anything? So I kind of think of something else. Oh, yeah, they were talking about the industrial enterprises, the Kriya Shakti. Prabhupada was talking about how in Malaysia is really famous for sandalwood. It's sandalwood trees. But now it's firestone. It's not, it's Malaysia. He had some name that he gave it for the rubber trees. Now instead of sandalwood, they're growing rubber trees so that they can manufacture tires for the Firestone company. Prabhupada said, can you eat rubber? Can you eat Firestone, eat the rubbers, eat the tires? So this isn't good proposals. They're the Kriya Shakti, they're engaging in Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that the non-devotees and the demons engage in horrible, unbeneficial acts which are actually meant to destroy the world. So in the Kali Yuga, we're kind of looking at the it's like the stupidity and the irony of it, and you can't help but laughing, because they're so off base. It just doesn't make sense anymore. The specific proposals. Prabhupada was saying problems. They've got nothing but problems. And then now that he was giving a class, he was saying he had to come up with some really crappy solutions for other really crappy problems. Just creating more problems. It was like there was Prabhupada was mentioning about this. There was someone who invented the wireless telegram, and another person saw this person speak in a university. about the wireless telegram and the specific simple technology that was involved in this. And someone else actually developed it and implemented it before this person was able to. And they got the credit as being the inventor of the wireless telegraph. So there was also some persons who are working with electricity and power. There's Nikola Tesla. And then his competitor, actually, Tesla didn't consider Edison his competitor. He actually was corresponding with Edison about the specific technology. He was kind of thinking maybe they can work together. But what they did, they came up with a whole other system, a system that requires the cables and the wires, and it was put on a meter, and you have to pay for it. He had a system set up, free electricity for everyone. It was just in the air, and he was showing you can power motor cars and lighting and everything that you use electricity for. So it was a far superior technology, as far as I understand. He had a technology that was working with Einstein, and they had this mishap with a Navy ship that kind of went into some other weird, strange dimension. It was actually seen 5 minutes earlier when the experiment began. It was seen 5 minutes earlier than the experiment began in another harbor for a few minutes. And then it again disappeared. They were looking for a cloaking device. But apparently Nikola Tesla and Edison had kind of started breaking the ice on time travel. And to tell you the truth, I was kind of wondering if time travel is actually really possible, because of the fact that the living entity in each specific body during any specific period of time would be embodied, that if you went back into time, right, in a certain body, how are you actually existing in the same space of time again in another body? So I was kind of wondering about the improbabilities of time travel, but there's a lot of talk about time travel, and there are persons who claim to be a time traveler from the future. And there are some people now who are trying to say that they were engaged in some government experiments in time travel, and that they actually traveled back in the time. So whether or not this is possible or not, but Krishna, he knows all past, present, future. Srila Vyasadeva, he's not subjected to the imperfect senses, and he's Trikala. He knows past, present, and future. But Krishna, he knows everything. All that is about to come, all that is now, and all that has already happened. And not only that, but not only this planet or this universe, but there are millions of innumerable universes emanating from the bodily pores of Mahavishnu, Pranadakshay Vishnu. And his yoga nidra feature is a sleep of creation. And so it's a super consciousness, is that super soul, or God, or Krishna, Lord in the heart. He knows all living entities. He knows all matter, all molecules. Like that, not a blade of grass moves without God's sanction. And in its totality, in a complete total cloud of Mahat Tattva covering, and where the living entities are, or the majority of the living entities, is considered to be the 3/4 creation rather than the 1/4 creation out of the cloud of Mahat Tattva, where there are ever increasing innumerable spiritual planets. Krishna is residing there in a specific form of Narayan. The inhabitants there, they also assume the same features of the Lord and engaging in devotional service. They're in awe and reverence. In Krishna Loka, there's a feature, it's love of Godhead rather than awe and reverence, but it's on a personal basis with Krishna, being a personal friend or a personal lover of Krishna. So Prabhupada, he was stating this a lot of times, that when the son leaves home, the father feels sad. And he kind of wonders how the son's doing like that. But then when the son, he returns home, he's very, very happy. He's very glad that his son has returned. Right. So it's the same thing, as that the living entities who have left Krishna's association and are engaged in conditional life of repeated birth and death in the material world over and over and over again. Again, assuming adverse fruit of actions in the human form of life, or Krishna was also stating that persons who have acted piously in the last life and in this life, is that they eventually they surrender to Krishna. Those are the persons. Actually, it's not by any karma or any good or bad deeds. Right? They just have the more of the mode of goodness to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engage in his devotional service more than the persons in the mode of passion and mode of ignorance would, where they actually really don't see any benefit in that at all. But the devotee, the bhakta, they see the benefit in that. Is that what Prabhupada was stating here in the purports, that Krishna reserves the right not to be exposed to everyone, especially the atheist, the impersonalist. For him, he is covered by his yoga maya feature, the feature, the form of unmanifestation. But in Vedanta and in Srimad Bhagavatam, what we were just reading, is that everything, the senses, and that are corresponding with the sense objects and the 8 material ingredients, how they come into being from the most subtle to the gross, from the unmanifested feature of Krishna, or the Brahman Jyoti. And this keeps reminding me of a science fiction novel I read. I believe it was called Mystic Warriors. And they had this whole philosophy. They're on this other planet, this other universe somewhere. And they had this whole philosophy that matter in all life has originated from photonic energy, right? So, what photonic energy, that's light. And Edison, he was also saying that too, that matter is basically slowed down light, like that. So, the building blocks of matter, the atoms and the molecules, what they're looking at in metaphysics, or they call this certain types of, where they're getting into smaller and smaller. Yeah. So there's, quantum physics. Yeah. Where you're getting into quantum physics and stuff. So what are the building blocks of matter? But from what we're stating here, it comes from a subtle form. It's manifested, but it's not visible. It's manifested in Krishna's subtle form in the Brahman. And then this is what Brahma was actually stating, is that these material ingredients and the senses and sense objects, they're coming about from the Brahman Jyoti. So, and this is also discussed too when Brahma creates the universe. He didn't have any elements to work with. There wasn't any materials. There was just darkness. There was no luminaries, no stars, no sun. There's nothing. So that Garbhodakshay Vishnu gave him something from his own body, right, in order to Krishna. Okay, maybe the battery started. Yeah, so do you have any points of discussion or any questions or anything? Do you have a question?
So this, thank you for your class, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. For this happiness you were talking about earlier in the class, it appears to be real happiness, but actually it's not happiness because it follows with distress.
Yeah,
is that correct? I mean, we can call it happiness, but it's
right.
not.
Yeah, that's the illusion. It's trying to find quench your thirst by trying to find even such a drop of water in the desert. Bob was saying, if you find a drop of water in the desert, it's not going to satisfy your thirst. Like I was just thinking about this. My dad, he lives in a canyon, and they had ice plant. The previous owners planted ice plant down in there's like a creek in the ridge where the hill kind of goes down. So, and that's a good firewall and some ice plant in the front because it absorbs water just like cactus, right? In the desert, the birds and the lizards and And a person who knows well enough knows that they can get some water from the cactus, whether it's going to satisfy your thirst or not, but there's a process everywhere in every condition, even in dry atmosphere. But it was saying that the illusion of material happiness is like a mirage. There's no water there in the desert, but have you ever seen the little vapors that kind of like a bit of a mirage? It's kind of like some vapors, something kind of looks watery. It looks watery. They're always depicting it someone as starving and dehydrated, dying of thirst in the desert. Then all of a sudden there's this beautiful blue lake, this oasis, the waves, the shore, but I don't know how vivid that illusion could become. Prabhupada was stating, Maharaj kind of told me what the will-o'-the-wisp is. It's like a bog in, I think he said Florida, right? And it glows eerie green like that. So he's talking about like the will-o'-the-wisp. It might be attractive, this glowing green substance, right? But it's not exactly reality. That. Oh, second. Oh, yeah, sure. I don't know how that went down. So, yeah, did that answer your question? Is there comments like that? Yeah, it's just simply another mental concoction, another illusion. Yeah, that's what he was stating, is that it's stated in Bhagavad Gita. I think I was kind of mentioning this. There's a process from lust, anger arises. So he was stating that Prabhupada said that anger is the little brother of lust, like that. So there's a whole process. When one becomes angry, one's memory becomes bewildered. And when memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when one loses his intelligence, then he again falls down into the material pool. So it's like the whole process right there. So the sitting place of this lust are the senses, the mind, intelligence. So armed with knowledge and yoga, slay this great enemy of spiritual realization, like that, this lust. But yeah, it's a phantasmagoria. There might be a little sense of happiness, but it's definitely going to be followed by distress. And this keeps reminding me of the verse in Bhagavad Gita that those who are self-realized or in knowledge, engaged in devotional service, they do not engage in the senses, the pleasure of the senses, knowing that it has a beginning and it has an end. So we're engaged in a process that has no beginning and end. Like that, we're engaged in devotional service, and it's ever increasing spiritual happiness and bliss, and the process is it's happy to engage in, right? There's verses in that too in Bhagavad Gita where it's happily performed, like that. So there might not be any taste in the beginning, but seizing such lower engagements by the higher engagement, then one is actually fixed in consciousness. So it's stated that his aim is one. He's always thinking of Krishna and Krishna's service. So his purpose and his aim is one. Where the non-devotees, the demons, their intelligence are unsteady. They can't stay with something for very long. So Voss asked me this one question, is this, when have you ever finished anything you actually started? I was involved in a few different processes, but that was a good statement. Said, yeah, you should follow through and finish what you start. And that's a pretty good idea. I didn't really have any examples because I hadn't really started a whole lot. I joined Krishna consciousness. I was in the reserve, so I was under contract, go to my drills on 1 weekend a month. Like that. My buddy used to come to the temple and pick me up and drop me off at the temple. I think one of the other guys actually, or a couple of the other guys actually came to the Sunday feast a few times. But I think we were kind of discussing these things, not like I actually gave it up, or I didn't finish it. It was something I started, I didn't finish. I was still in a contract, so, but that was a good, positive, a question or statement to kind of discuss that you should finish what you start. But the demons and the karmas, they can't stay steady enough to do that, like that, or undergo so much tapasya. Prabhupada was saying that the Beatles, they became very, very popular and wealthy, and so much fame, and their music was really, really good, because they had performed a lot of tapasya like that. So, and nothing comes easy. So that's another reason for fall down that Rupa Goswami mentions in Nectar of Instruction is over engaging in mundane things which are difficult to achieve. Like that. So once you engage in devotional service with confidence and enthusiasm, one pointedness, there's the process of the Eightfold Mystic Yoga System that Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita also is from the yamas and the niyamas, the do's and the don'ts. So there's no illicit sex, no meeting, no intoxication, no gambling. So this is basically a simplified and condensed, right? One should practice vegetarianism or compassion, or study the Vedanta, brahmacharya, and so one is not engaging in inauspicious activities. So these are principles of cleanliness and truthfulness, mercifulness, and what's the other one? I'm still missing another one. Cleanliness, mercy, charity. Right. So these are the yamas and the niyamas, the do's and the don'ts. Don't do this, but do this, or do this way. And then gradually one starts to develop remembrance. There's the dhyana and the dharana. So when one has remembrance, so remember Krishna, whenever your mind wanders from whatever and wherever it wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one should certainly withdraw it, bring it under control of the self. So that was a really nice verse that we were mentioning that the yogi, he's transcending up to past the sun, past the Milky Way, Svarva Loka, Jnana Yoga, Loka, Brahma Loka, and that there's a process where the yogi merges the mind in the self, and then the self into the super self within the heart. So that's a good way. And then from remembrance, it becomes concentrated. There's a jnana and dharana, so concentrated. And then when this is concentrated, then from the next stage is samadhi, and that's just always thinking of Krishna. How for longer and longer periods of time, how much longer can you just think of Krishna, and for longer and longer periods of time, kind of really exercise those brain cells like that, and become steady in always thinking of Krishna in those various aspects. So, and that's samadhi. So meditation and samadhi is not in anything impersonal or void like that. So the Mayavadis or the Gyanis, they have to artificially try to control their senses, but the senses are engaged, senses and mind intelligence engaged in Krishna service is a non-material activity, and that's the actual proper constitution, is that everything's meant for realizing Krishna or serving Krishna, not our own selves, our self-centered egoism. Prabhupada was mentioning this in a lecture, Aham Brahmeti, I am this body, but we are Aham Brahmasmi, that I am not this material body, I'm spiritual soul, I am Krishna's. And so then everything should be engaged in the service of Krishna. Yeah, so were there any other questions or comments? Okay, so we can maybe end Srimad Bhagavatam class there. Srimad Bhagavatam class, ki jai.